All right, so the first order is call to order. So this meeting is being recorded by the Ad Hoc Committee, additional funding for the fire station. If any other person present are doing the same, you must notify the chair's person now at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I was informed that Don Morin was going to be recording. However, she will not be present.
Okay. All right. Next, we'll start off with roll call. Councilor Forgy.
Here.
Councilor Ricketts.
Here.
And I'm here, so we have a full party here. Or quorum, if you want to call it.
Let the party begin.
I'm just taking notes as I speak as well, so just bear with me here.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda was approval of minutes. From the last meeting, we didn't have a real good meeting structure, so we didn't carry through any minutes. So there won't be any minutes to approve from the last meeting. This will probably be the first meeting where we actually have some substance to approve in the next meeting. So the next item is discussion. So I'd like to start off by saying I met with Chief Strand on Friday of last week and I thank you for your time. He took me on a tour of the facilities that he's in now, showed me the equipment that he has and some of the things that he's struggling with. And it gave me a better understanding of what we're dealing with in the new fire station. So I think that was pretty critical to being able to analyze what we're doing for him in the future. So thank you for that time, which kind of leads into the next thing that we talked about when I was with him. Project items cut from the project to meet budget requirements. You know, it was quite surprising. I know they've been slashing away at things here. So, you know, I gathered a list. I'll share that list with you guys. I think, you know, we identified 3 major points that, you know, he would like to see us kind of gear our fundraising towards, which I think is important, right? Because it's nice to spearhead one area. So, you know, one item was the outdoor patio area for the firefighters. That was a big thing. So they wanted a nice outdoor patio area with privacy fence. So, you know, in the nicer weather, they're not stuck in a building. They could go outside. They could use their grills. These guys are typically there for 12 hours a day, sometimes longer. So giving them the capability to be outside and to enjoy the weather and not be stuck in a building, I think is important, right? So that was one of those areas, and that would be a simple patio paver area with some privacy fencing, which, you know, I think would be pretty easy to fundraise money for. Another item we identified was an outbuilding. So they had to, in order to build the museum, they had to get rid of a 3-garage outdoor building. That would store their brush truck. It would store their boats. It would store anything in their lower bay storage right now. You know, so by doing so, they had to cram everything kind of together in the bays that they had available, which kind of makes space a little tight. It's, according to the chief, it's still workable. It's not a major interference, but, you know, you obviously, if you have something in the back of or in the middle that you have to pull out, you got to pull other vehicles out first. So it's not ideal. That outbuilding was eliminated from the budget, which kind of goes into a whole other story where we kind of got into, you know, well, the other issue is, you know, not having a building in the north end of Greenfield for, you know, dispatch time. Right now, it takes them about 12 minutes to dispatch to the northern end of Greenfield. So, you know, there's something to talk about there, I think, in our meetings as councilors saying, you know, is it worth building that outbuilding at the new fire station and raising money for that? Or is it worth maybe considering in the future building an outbuilding in the northern end of Greenfield? Because, you know, the response time is supposed to be 4 minutes. We're at 12 minutes, right? So we're 3 times the response time to get the house burning in my precinct at least, right? So another area that they wanted to try to raise money for was the museum. So obviously they're going to get the museum, they're going to get the walls painted, but they're looking to broadcast the history of the Greenfield Fire Department. They don't have any cabinets. They don't have any, you know, glass front areas to put, you know, memorabilia in. So I think that's another easy fundraising thing, right? There was a list of whole other things that they've done, which will kind of go under value engineering, because I kind of ran by the chief on items they might have eliminated VE wise, but that will kind of be later in the agenda. Does anybody have any questions about those other 4 items? Okay. So, then after meeting with the chief, the next thing we talked about, was the fundraising aspect, which is the next item on the agenda. So I had asked about the firefighter association, and the response was, they can't raise money for fundraising. So they could do it for other things, but for fundraising for that, it's not like the police department where they could utilize their association to get gym equipment, different things. It's really not meant for that. It's meant for if a firefighter loses his life, to help the families, right? Which is very important. So it got into the next spiel, which was, the city does have a gift account for the fire department. So if a firefighter does pass away, the family can offer to have all donations go to that gift account. So, I was wondering, legally, we'd have to go through our legal counsel to see if we could utilize that gift account for the fundraising purposes if we advocated a team to spearhead the fundraising, which, can't be us counselors, but I did have some good conversations with Joseph Regari on the phone, and he brought up a good point. He said, we should really get together with the library committee that did the fundraising, because they have people that raise money for a living. That's like what they specialize in. So he thinks it would be a good idea, in the next meeting to maybe invite them to the meeting to see how they did it for the library and if they'd be willing to help us with the fire station.
Okay.
And, being an engineer, I kind of just follow step by step, but we'll open it up to conversation after. Fundraising suggestions. So value engineering thoughts to reduce total construction costs. So, I had talked to the chief, and it looks like they've already done everything they can, really. They went from a metal roof to commercial asphalt, shingles. They made some sacrifices with different parts of the building. I did invite David Singer, who I'll probably have jump on board in a minute here, just to kind of talk about the building itself and, other things that they've V'd down, so we have a better understanding what they've cut out, right? I think in terms of the total construction costs, they have the key items that I was looking for. They have the radiant heat in the bays, so they're not dealing with water in the garage. They have a lot of good things in this building, and the architects actually did a very good job, so I'd like to give them credit. Does anybody have any comments on those 3 items before I kind of give Chief the mic?
No, from everything I heard, it seems like the fire station's been well thought out and thought out for the future. So they don't have to go back later and think of like, oh, if we have some women firefighters, we should put this in or that. It sounds like they tried to plan for the future when they were putting this out. So I kind of like that. So if I'm missing something about that, it'll be good to hear about that.
Okay. Chief, I'm just going to let you kind of comment on, make sure I didn't miss anything for our conversation that we had on Friday, but I think I pretty much summed it up. And, if you had to prioritize those items, what would you say is, the most important to you? Because I know one thing I did leave out was the contingencies and furnishings, which is, was about $1 million, right? That was for equipment like washing equipment for the firefighter gear. And you had a list of things that, you don't have funding for this year. But you're pursuing grants to see what you can kind of get through grant money to fund some of those items.
Sure. You want me to jump in here?
Sure.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for the invite for tonight's meeting. And I appreciate the effort that this ad hoc committee is doing for the fire station and really enhancing the conduit back to the city council as a whole. So we appreciate that. Let me first start off by talking about some of the knowns that we have right now. And the first one is that we are close to going out to bid for contractors for the project. So we needed to know what the overall shell and main components of a fire station. We needed to know that right away. And so the committee worked very hard to value engineer where they could, make some changes where they could, and really a fire station that the city could be proud of. We do have a couple shortcomings. The main shortcomings, as you identified, are the contingencies and the, furnishings and things like that, which at some point we're going to have to address. Now, the fire department is working on trying to secure grants to limit that number. So it's not that we don't know the overall number. It's we're really working hard to lessen that before we have to do anything with that with that number. And we're optimistic. For example, one piece of equipment that we've put in for a grant for, we should be hearing within the next couple months, is $100,000 piece of equipment. Which lessens the amount of we would need out of that 600 or 700,000 from the furnishings. So that's why it gets a little complicated, but that's where we're at. When we talk about fundraising activities, really the effort, I think, that I personally think would be my suggestion is to go to the areas that we know that aren't going to be part of the project, just because of cost, right? And so we identified a few of them. The one of them being is, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but an outdoor area to eat outside, to cook outside, is something that would improve the quality for the firefighters working there. The other area that we talked about is some type of memorial out in front of the fire station, where we have the old cupola from the old firehouse that we would like to refinish. We've had conversations with the tech school. We've had other conversations, but that's one area we'd like to take a look at. And the other one is that with some of the changes that we made to the overall structure, we were able to put the museum back into the project. Now, the museum being back into the project is the basics for the museum. So it's some display cases, it's some lighting, it's lighting, and it's the walls that go around it. But I think we have the opportunity to do something really nice that I believe is going to be outside of our budget, and perhaps that's where future fundraising activities could go. As far as the outbuilding go, that's another thing that's going to be critical for us. The decision whether or not that should be put off and talk about something in the north end of town is I think a complicated decision. It's not something that I think at this point there's a lot of appetite out there for that conversation, nor funding for that. So I would still prefer to keep the conversation on the permanent station, but it is something that the city needs to look at in the future. We are one community out of like 3 in the Commonwealth that have the population and land size that we have that operates out of a single station. But I'm not advocating for that right now. That's a project many years down there, a few years down the road. So, but I do appreciate that having that talked about and at least getting into people's mindset. So that's what I have. I will reiterate that the committee has done I think, a fantastic job of really trying to keep the costs within check by value engineering, and the architect has been fantastic about that. We had to reduce the height of the roof. We've made some other changes to the firehouse, but the overall operations of the firehouse have not been overly impacted by that. We kept to the core of what we need to accomplish with our mission as a fire department, and I think they're doing a good job at that. But I'll take any questions or any comments.
Yes.
Go ahead, Penny.
Oh, sorry. So the furniture that you needed, is that for office space or is that museum or?
Counselor, that's a great question. The short answer is that just about everything in the firehouse needs to be updated. So things from like kitchen tables to chairs in the day room to a new gear washer, some washing machines.
Wait, I'm sorry. What kind of a washer?
A washing machine, a gear washer.
Gear washer. Okay.
It was purchased in, I think, around 2005, 2006. It needs to be updated. That's really a critical piece for us. The air filling station for the SCBAs, that's where we're going after a grant right now. But if we don't get the grant, that needs to be updated. And then little things like beds for the dorms. The beds came from, I believe they came from the firehouse on Federal Street.
Oh my gosh.
So, and we've been at a 412 since 1936. So, it's time we get new frames. So the little things like that, but overall they add up.
Councilor Ford, you go ahead.
Thank you. Chief, thank you for being with us this evening. We really appreciate you being here. My concerns when we talk about the value engineering and because of the increase in material costs and everything else that have kind of been tailing us at this point, I guess my concern is what are we actually, in your opinion, what are we actually sacrificing for fitting ourselves into a budget piece that really at this point is the limited amount of funds that we have? For instance, my concern has always been the metal roof versus the asphalt roof. We know that metal roof will last longer and hold up better. The epoxy flooring, for instance, on the apparatus floor. So it seems to me we're trading the internal items to go ahead and put those structural pieces in place at this particular point. And we're focusing on internal items. Is there anything that we can do in regard to helping with the actual structural pieces? I think, Councilor Healy, you had a name for them when you were talking, or somebody had a name for them when you're talking about when you go out for bid, you need to get certain things in order. Mm-hmm. And then when the bids come in, they may be higher or lower. And there's a list of some sort where people have ranked certain things to restore based on where the bids come in. So if you could just address that, it's a little bit of a difficult concept for me because I think a budget, a commitment in money should make the best station we possibly can afford. And it seems like we're sacrificing some things for others. And that's really why I think this committee was formed, is to see what we could do to help with the funding of the overall project.
Yeah, so that's a great question and a lot to unpack.
You got it. You won the prize.
So let me first start off by saying that when the project went out to the estimators, it came back much higher than we anticipated. So that's where we had to make some of the structural changes. One of the last changes that we did is we cut off a section of the apparatus bay where there was 2 bays that were going to be 3 truck deep bays, and we cut them back to 2 truck deep bays. And we did that, which restored the epoxy floor, which is a matter of safety for the firefighters, a non-slip surface, and is going to last twice as long as just a regular treated concrete floor. would last. And so that was restored. The museum was restored. And then the committee is working very hard to develop a contingency list. Okay. And the way that a contingency list is, before it goes out to bid, the committee's going to decide on, okay, we've had X amount of items that need to be restored, such as the metal roof instead of the asphalt roof. And they're going to list those. The issue with that from procurement law stance is that you can make a list, but you can't pick and choose what items on the list depending on where the bids come back. We're hoping that the bids come back at or below what we're anticipating. If they do, then some of those contingencies can be added back, such as the metal roof. However, like I just said, we have to list them. The committee is working very hard to identify this on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in priorities. And if the funding is available because of cost measures within the bid process, you have to take number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. You can't go take number 4 and then number 1 and then number 2. So they really have to be very careful of that contingency list. And they're working on that. And they should have a final contingency list within the next meeting or two, would be my guess. As far as overall, I don't want to call it adjustments that we had to make. One of the big one was lowering the roof of the apparatus bay, which prevented us from having the nice natural light and the high ceilings that we needed for certain things. But from an operational standpoint, that doesn't impact the trucks that are on the floor. Cutting back the bay does do that, but that's where the outbuilding comes into play, because the smaller vehicles can go out into that outbuilding, freeing up the apparatus space, which from an operational standpoint is actually easier for us than having a 3 deep bay. Because think about that. If I put, say, my brush truck behind 2 other trucks and we have a brush fire, I got to move 2 trucks to get to the 3rd truck. So it actually makes a little bit of sense, but it came out of a necessity from a cost standpoint. Mm-hmm. So it's been a long, complicated process, but the committee's working very hard on trying to identify exactly what you're asking for is, what are the priorities to restore. Unfortunately, the overall brick and mortar, if you will, of the building, the height of the ceiling, some other things with the building, we need to know that now, because it's got to go out to bid. Because if we don't go out to bid now or very shortly, we're going to have delays. And those delays a year from now are going to matter because we are leasing both the tents or the apparatus bay and the trailers. We're leasing those. And when we go beyond the lease agreement for that, then we start talking about an additional monthly charge that we have to be careful with, because we're going to have to take that out of the overall budget to keep that going. So we're on a time crunch. And so the actual structure, the envelope of the structure, and the lighting and the heating, and that's all being finalized now, and we're hoping to get out the bid very, very shortly.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I just have one question, Chief. You had mentioned the grants that you were trying to obtain, and you mentioned a few of them. Is that something you'd be willing to share with the committee?
Sure.
Just via email, what grants you're going after, so we kind of have an idea what you're going after?
Sure. It's one primary one right now, because we can only apply for them annually. But this is an assistance to firefighters grant, which we have been successful in the past, and we're hoping to be successful again. And that one is specifically for the air filling station. Our air filling station that we have right now came from the old firehouse that was purchased in the mid-2000s. They no longer make parts for it. It's outdated. It needs to be replaced. Was able to make the move from Main Street to Hope Street, mm-hmm. which saved us a lot. But that's a big piece of equipment. That's about $100,000 to $125,000 that we have put in for a grant, and we're hoping to be successful. And if we're not, then we go back to the drawing board and see where else we can start making some savings, but that's one of them. I anticipate, I'm hoping that we are going to go for the gear washer through a grant at some point. But those are the two big ones right now.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I can't promise we're going to get the grant, but we're putting every effort we can into the fire station.
Perfect.
So, yep.
It just kind of, it helps us analyze, because that's obviously going to come up the next fiscal year or so for that equipment. So it kind of helps us analyze, if we do get those grants, we're looking at, 8/10 of your $1 million, $800,000, right?
If I could, Councillor Healy.
Absolutely.
Thank you. This is probably a day late and a dollar short, and I don't remember it from the original plans and everything. But there is no plan to put solar on the roof of the station, or is there solar panels?
So I would, if it's okay with you, I see Carol Collins is on.
Yes.
She is very versed in the heating system that is going into this firehouse. And if she's comfortable, I would ask her to answer that type of question.
I was trying to keep under the radar, but that's okay.
I saw you.
From what I understand, we did speak when we all had a project team meeting to go over the drawings. I know at the beginning of the project that was just included, and I think at this point I think it might be an add alternate, which is what the chief was explaining before, the prioritized list. That's how it was done with the library, and it is going to be included, but despite what everyone might think, I know there's a lot of assumptions. My top goal is to make the building as efficient as possible, as tight and high performing. The solar is the last piece that helps offset the energy consumption, but everybody loves solar, so I again, as far as I'm aware, I don't believe it's part of the actual project, although it's be great if we can make it happen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Sorry, Carol.
No problem.
Actually, I think that kind of fits in well, because I think David Singer, who's on the call that we invited, would be able to explain some of those things to us a little more as far as what we're going after for add alternates and those items, so we can kind of understand the phasing of the structure. Because like if you do decide to do solar on the roof, a metal roof is much easier to put on, and solar is cheaper to install because it's simple clips on the highs of the metal roof. So there's cost savings in solar installation. So I think, David, if you're on the call, I'd like to let you jump on board here and introduce yourself.
Hi, I don't, from my computer, my camera isn't working, so I don't know if I'm being seen or not.
No, but I
No.
can hear it.
We can hear you though. That's the important part.
Well, that's good. I can see you, so maybe I have an advantage. It's a little frustrating. So I've been listening though. My position on the committee is as co-chair is a little subordinate to the chief and to Butch Hawkins. Is Butch Hawkins on this call?
No, I don't see him.
I am.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm under the city headline or something up there.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know why it said that, but
So Derek, if you have specific there are things I can add to the conversation, but I think I would defer to Butch to answer the questions that I think you want to ask the chairs of the committee.
Sure.
And thank you very much for inviting us.
Oh, not a problem. You guys have been working hard, and I came in late in the game. I wish I could have helped earlier with my experience in buildings, but I will. Next project, right? So, Butch, I did have some questions. So we talked about the metal roofing. Is that for sure being seen as an add alternate?
yeah. And one thing I'd like to say about add alternates, when we choose them, that's the order that they have to be taken after you know, after money is developed to deal with ad alternates. So in other words, if we had 3 or 4 ad alternates and suddenly we like the number 3 over the number 1, we can't jump. So we're going to have to take some time to really go over our alternates to make sure that we put together the list in the chronological order that we'd like to see, you know, things added if money became available.
Sure. I guess the reason why I ask, right, is because if there are ad alternates, it's obviously things that you want that you don't have right now, right? So it would help me kind of identify if there's any way we could help with this committee to obtain those ad alternates, right? So I don't know if you have these items off the top of your hand, but would you be willing to share, you know, the whole list of ad alternates with the committee at some point?
We've talked about them, but we haven't actually developed a priority list yet because I think part of the issue is until we go out to bid, we don't really know where we are financially, but certainly the roof was an ad alternate, is an ad alternate.
Yeah. And I mean, sorry to interrupt. Prioritize wise to us right now isn't really important. I think the just total list of what you're looking for is important, right? And then as you do prioritize them later on, then we can look at it collectively and say, okay, here's 1, 2, 3, 4. They might have money for those. If they do, well, here's 5, 6, 7, 8. How can we help them get those, right? So I think just understanding the total list of ad alternates would be very beneficial to this committee.
Sure. So why don't you give us a chance, myself, maybe David Singer, the chief, and our OPM, to sit down and develop, a thoughtful list of items. We're not going to give them to you probably in a chronological order yet, but we would definitely, and I think we could do that. What's today, Wednesday? Might even be able to do it by the end of the week if we can reach out to the OPM, and he's always pretty much available and chat about it. And I can email them to you.
Okay. Yeah, that would be very helpful. Okay. Counselors, do you have any questions for?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Counselor Ricketts.
So this is like way down the road, but I still want to know now, like, what's the maximum amount of people on a shift? So when you talk about like a kitchen table and chairs and all of that stuff, how many are you thinking about for that? I want to know, and the same question for beds.
So I guess I'll answer that. So the fire station right now is being designed with I think it's 4 double bunks and 2 single bunks. So I think a grand total of 10.
Okay.
The original design called for 12.
Okay.
But I believe it's 10 right now. We currently, as of the way that we're operating, we currently run 6-person shifts. Are fully staffed under the old model is 7-person shifts. I would say it would be reasonable to down the road, if the increase in what we do continues the same pace as it's been the last 5 years, you could see up to 10 to 11 on a shift.
Okay. And then when you
down the road, though.
All right. And when you say a gear washer, that is specific to fire departments, right? Or public safety in general. So it's not like the maximum washer and dryer you can get anywhere else. This is like a commercial or more than a commercial brand washer and dryer, right?
That is correct. This is not a residential washer. I actually should rephrase what it is. It's what we call an extractor, a gear extractor. It looks like a big commercial drum washer, but what it is that the machine rotates the drum at very, very high RPMs. And what that does is actually extracts the contaminants out of the gear and washes it at the same time. So it's a very specialized piece of equipment. The one that we have right now does washes 4 sets of turnout gear at a time. So it's a pretty big machine. It's heavy duty. It's got to be bolted to the floor. It's got special cleaners that we use to clean the contaminants off. So you're right, Counselor. It's not like a residential or even a one that you would see in most cleaners.
Okay. And then when you go to get grants, you said that there's a grant for assistant to firefighters.
Mhm.
Is there any other place for grants? Like, is there grants for just public safety in general? Do you know?
Yeah, so we go after every grant that there is available. Unfortunately, post September 11th, there was a lot of grants. That is not the case now, and so they're few and far between. But we watch for them all the time, and we apply for everything that we can.
Okay, because I was thinking about the museum, and I wonder if we could get some help from maybe the Greenfield Historical Commission about some grant ideas or something for the cases and all of that stuff. And for the patio thing, I know I was thinking, and that's way down the line too, but to try to make that like a Home Depot project or something.
It's a great idea.
Because when I used to work there years ago, we used to go out and do lots of veteran stuff. And I remember doing a whole house and doing the sod, the garage. We did everything for veterans at one point, but it was a Home Depot project. So we could write that up for them for the patio. So I'm willing to help with that and to help you go to the local store. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up, somebody brought up earlier, was Joey Ruggieri for the library funding. And I would very much like to hear from him or Dave Singer, because I thought there was a point where maybe there was some funding that they got that they may give some to the fire station. But if not, the idea about getting the funding person, maybe to know like how much they paid their funding person, so we would know how much it would be if we use that same person or use someone like that to help us out.
Can I speak to that?
Yes.
Please.
Okay. So there's been a lot of, I think there's been some misunderstanding about that piece of it. So let me explain how I understand it.
Okay.
The connection that we have with the Library Foundation is the hope that you will see that the idea that the foundation has received, $1 to $2 million and is giving it to the city opens up your ability to vote for more funding. We're not being given any money directly by the foundation. We're not participating at all with the foundation. The only thing that our relationship with the foundation is that we asked the foundation if they would accelerate their giving to the city, and they did, and they gave the city $500,000 several months ago.
Yeah.
That money, because of their strict requirements, has to be earmarked to pay down the debt for the library. They have no choice but to spend that money for the library purposes. Plus, people who are donating money to the foundation want to know for sure that that's where the money is going.
Mm-hmm.
So that spending, theoretically, if we are to receive the $2 million, that spending will reduce the debt of the city by $2 million.
Oh, okay.
So instead of borrowing, I'm going to throw numbers out. I'm not sure the library numbers, but let's assume for its round numbers. So let's assume the city has they've authorized 19.5, but 9.5 is the grant. So at the end of the day, the city is going to be obligated to pay $10 million for the library, let's say. That's just a number. I mean, I know the newspaper reporter is on here. My quoting is, I'm giving an illustration.
Mhm.
So if the Library Foundation pays the city $2 million, then the borrowing will be reduced to $8 million.
Okay.
Now, when we came to you last time, there was a lot of concern about rubbing up against the debt ceiling
Mhm.
that was recommended. And so by having the debt ceiling, but by having the debt reduced by $2 million, it gives the council leeway to borrow back up to the debt ceiling. And we're hoping that you will feel comfortable, borrowing more money for the fire station, understanding that the original concern that you had to address the first time we got together, it will be there, but in a different way. Less, you're not rubbing up anymore. Now, you may have other priorities for that money, and we understand that. But if you're looking at the fact that the fire station and the library are connected because the fire station had to move because of the library, I think that the funding by the foundation is a component of our understanding of what the city council can do and why. And I think that the fundraising and their commitment to having that fundraising go back to the city rather than go into the library itself is a reflection of their commitment to making sure that there's enough money as we rub up against the debt ceiling that you can then provide, and more money, I should say, that you could provide to the fire project. Does that make sense, Councilor Ricketts?
Yes, and thank you for that explanation. It's only making a lot more sense because Councilor Forgy's shaking her head, and if she's not jumping up and screaming, then I know it's on the right track.
We want to see you guys nod your heads, not shake your heads. Nod.
Yes.
The idea, although a good one, the idea that we would invite the library folks to this meeting, we have not. I think that would surprise them. Now,
Okay.
I understand that Joe Ruggieri, being on the foundation, has expressed a desire to do that. And Chief, interrupt me if I'm speaking out of turn, but I don't know what they know about our wanting their expertise. So I don't want to surprise them and have it be something. Now, again, I think that fundraising is not going to be the short-term solution for what we're going to need from you when we get out to bid, and if we find that the estimators are correct. It will be helpful for us, so you know, because I know you want to build the best fire station that you can,
Yep.
that there might be areas where fundraising is the right place to go. And I think the chief has identified those areas, because we don't want to, there are limits to what we want to ask, but things like the roof being upgraded and other things that have been put into alternative choices rather than direct choices are things that we would be very happy for you to consider. But as you know, I don't know, Chief, if you have come to our meetings, you would see that we acted in good faith that the project was going to cost $10 million. We found out that I learned that the way the system works is that we devised the project through the help of the firemen and the chief as to making sure that this fire station met minimum standards. And through that process, we went out to get estimates, and those estimates came in at over, originally 13 million, and then we pared it down. But so in the meantime, we may have other sources of funds that are being directed towards us by the mayor's office from the, I guess the the COVID funds that the city received.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some money available for that. But the only way that we could actually make the fire station work with our own energy, without your support, without going to you for support in the first place, was to cut out the FF&E. And that made it so that we now can build a minimally secure fire station. But we need more money. We need to refill the FF&E, and we need other things that it sounds like you're very open to hearing from the committee and from the fire department about what our needs are. And those are the things. And we didn't want to come to the council after the bid and surprise the city council with that information. So the idea of this ad hoc committee was so that we're having this conversation now in April. So you understand. I know Councilor Forgy has come to our meetings. Councilor Healy, maybe that's not easy for you to do. So this hopefully is helpful. But so we have the numbers themselves haven't been defined, but we are over budget, and we won't know how much and to what extent we'll need your help. Again, Chief, let me know if until we go out to bid.
Right.
But because the estimators have given us what they estimate to be the costs, which are probably high, hopefully, this conversation is based on that information. There are no real numbers out there except the estimators, which is a middle, it's a beginning point so that we know what we're up against. But we won't know for real until we go out to bid. So I would suggest that some of the questions that you ask be answered by our OPM, Neil, and that if you're going to schedule meetings regularly, that the next meeting he be invited, and then the three of us can also talk to you about the alternatives, the alternative construction and our priorities, which the committee hasn't. I mean, again, the roof is important, but I don't know. We just haven't had that conversation yet. Because we need to go out to bid. So everything we're doing now is to get ready to go out to bid as soon as possible. Because on the back end, as the chief said, we have the temporary fire station. And the temporary fire station has been budgeted to $2 million, but every month we go over there, being there, and it's 22 months is what we anticipated, is expensive, $40,000 a month. So that money's much better served for the fire station. So that's why, again, the whole idea of this coming together swiftly sometime after bid, where we would know what the number is, come back to you, have you go to your more formal committees and talk about it, bring it to the council for vote. And then we could say to the people who are doing the construction, we're ready. And the sooner we're ready, the more money we're going to save on that piece alone. Okay. So I'm giving you this as, a taxpayer co-chair of the committee. That's what we're trying to do to make this project work both ways. Save money as best we can, but also make the best fire station that we can, because we don't want to come back to this project for 50 to 70 years, I would expect.
Right. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for all the explanation. I think that all works. I think for me, the most important thing is just to have this conversation and keep it out in the public eye. So, if there's anyone out there like, my heart, Skip Hammond, there's another person that's out there like that just really cared about public safety. You just never know. So I just putting good thoughts out in the universe and out to the community. And I don't know, I think together we can figure this all out. But thanks for just explaining all that you did, all of you, tonight.
I agree, Councilor Ricketts. David, that was very, very informative. I've actually learned a lot from there, so I appreciate your time. I think the most important thing that came out of that, if I could just recollect on what we just talked about, is really the library donations going back to the town and lowering our debt, right? So I think on our end as this committee, we need to go back and meet internally to see where that debt money is going in the overall budget and what the mayor has in mind for it, because I do agree that these projects are linked, right? So you had the fire station had to move for the library. We're building the library. Now we got to build this fire station. So if we could take some of that fundraising efforts from the library that's paying off the debt and absolve more debt towards your project, I think that makes sense, right? So we need to do our homework on that. So thank you.
Thank you.
And then the ARPA funds, I think that's another great idea. I think we should be identifying how we could use the ARPA funds maybe to pay for some of this, the washer gear or something, which is critical for even for COVID related reasons, right? So we could say that's critical for that. Councilor Forgy, go ahead.
Not to interrupt, but to the best of my recollection, the mayor has already contributed over $1 million. I want to say 1.5, but I don't know. Maybe
that's correct.
Okay, thank you, David. she has committed $1.5 million of ARPA funds under a category in the distribution of funds that talks to low revenue. So they are allowed to commit ARPA funds towards the project. That commitment has been made. Okay. So that is what has happened already. The other thing, just to clarify a little bit for what David said, is that the way it actually works is the borrowing is out there. The authority for the borrowing is out there. If the project comes in under budget, or it's offset by the amount of fundraising done by the foundation, then the balance left in the borrowing would either retire that debt and then you can reissue new debt, or if it can go to a like kind project. So if you're doing construction, for instance, on school A, and it comes in, under budget, that authority is still out there that could go to school B. Mm-hmm. So there is that possibility that at the end of all of this, that debt offset would be available to throw toward the fire station project.
Perfect. Thank you for explaining
that. And thank you, David, for your help and what you've previously said. That is great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
David, one last request. If I don't know if Tammy would know Neil's email address, your OPM, but if you don't mind sharing that contact information, so if we do want to invite him to the next meeting, we have his email and everything.
That's interesting. I was going to say she has it, but she doesn't, because the mayor's office has that info. The mayor directs the mayor's office directs our meetings as Tammy directs your meetings. So
I can forward it to you, though.
Oh, thanks,
Derek. Yeah, and I'll get a hold of him and let him know that
happy to come.
You'd be interested in having him come to a meeting, but I'll share that with you so you have it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Butch.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
So I think that goes through the discussion. I think that was a pretty fulfilling discussion. So thank you, everybody, for participating. The next item on the agenda would be new business. Does anybody have anything else to add before I continue?
No, I did. Oh, go ahead, Councilor Forgy.
Councilor Forgy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Whoops. I think one of the things that one of our next meetings should focus on is revenue sources. I think that's important, and we just had a bit of that discussion this evening. But maybe if we get a little bit more in depth, so that we're better prepared when when we present to council, what possibilities there exist for the revenue pieces. Also, I do want to say that I was contacted by a constituent who had a very interesting and good idea about raising revenue generally. And it really had to do with, it's not on this particular topic, but it had to do with some of our natural resources. So I would encourage members of the public right now, as we're brainstorming, if you've got ideas that you think we haven't even thought about yet, please get in touch with us at the council and let us know what you're thinking about. You never know, could be brilliant. It could be the one idea that saves us. So I just like to ask the public for their help on this, and let us know what you're thinking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Councilor Ricketts.
Yes, I just want to say this is such an honor to be on this committee with Councilor Forgy and Healy. I just feel like this is so worthwhile and we're doing great things. And I just want to really thank Carol Collins and Butch and Dave Singer and the chief. I learned a lot. I can't believe how much notes I took in this one meeting, but thank you. I really needed this. And I do like Councilor Forgy's idea about revenue sources and stuff. And it makes me think about our marijuana business on the Legion Avenue and stuff, and if a
Bingo.
portion of that could be earmarked just for the fire station, if it could just be an ask from the city to them, because this is so important. And the fire station in general, you know, it's like if there's ever a fire, they don't get to ask, like, did you give us any money? Did they this, that? They're just there. So I really like that conversation that we could have and look, you know, at where revenue is coming in, and maybe there's some ask towards this whole project, which I know is down the line. And I respect everyone from the Fire Commission asking us to just give them a little bit more time. They're getting their bids in, they're getting ready and stuff. But thank you so much for being here early and just knowing that we're there with you and we're there supporting you. And we just want to work together. I am so emotional. I can't believe this, but
Hold that
no,
thought.
thank you.
Hold that thought.
All right. Thank you so much, Councilor Ricketts. And I agree, the revenue sources. So those are things that I'll add to the next agenda. And Councilor Forgy and Ricketts, I'll reach out to you off the meeting and just come up with some talking points in that avenue. I think you and I together can collectively come up with some ideas there. The next item on the agenda is old business. Since this is the second meeting, we really don't have any old business. So I'm going to go on to just say the next meeting is going to be held Tuesday, April 26, 2022 at 6 p.m. via WebEx conferencing system. And move forward a motion to adjourn.
So moved, 4G.
Second,
CPD.
Ricketts.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say the formation of this committee and so many people working on making sure that we have an appropriate firehouse. You have no idea the message that sends to the firefighters, and I just wanted to say thank you. Means a lot to the guys that are there every day, trying to keep the city safe. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry.
And we had two, so I'd like to adjourn the meeting. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming.
Okay.